Welcome back to the Fox Robbins Business Show. Great to have you come to another episode. Come on in, have a seat, relax. This is Fox Robbins, which is all about developing your best business ideas. This show is all about being helpful, providing advice, counseling, encouragement, and cheerleading. We don't have fluff balls, but
no,
for small business. But
I'm not going to shave my legs.
We want to see small business succeed at all levels. Whether you're just thinking about, if you're just thinking about starting a business, come on board. If you are in the act of actually starting up a business, we want to talk to you. Or your business is already up and running, and maybe it needs some help or some ideas, or it wants to make big changes to new markets, new products, or even import-export business, or whatever the case might be. We want to be of assistance. And I'm the co-host, Bill Fox. The other co-host, though, get this guy. This guy is cordless. He's vibrating, and he's mellifluous. It's Coach Robbins.
Mellifluous, that's me. How about that?
Coach, we're off and running. We're going to,
Did you say cordless?
Yes, you're cordless.
I was going to patent the cordless extension cord. Stephen White, forgive me.
we got a special guest this guy. We're going to talk about insurance, for small business, and to help us along, we've got Adam Trivilino. Adam, nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Adam is an expert, and he's agreed to help us out, wade through the ins and outs and all the possibilities and the probabilities of insurance, for small business. Quickie disclaimer: just this is insurance is technical, but this information on our show is general information for our audience. It's not intended as legal advice or necessarily a complete discussion of insurance needs. But we will, Adam, we're going to jump in with your introduction to commercial general liability insurance purposes and definitions. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, commercial general liability, quite basically, is really your third-party liability to your clients or others who might do business with you or interact with you as a business owner. Essentially, what it does is protect you from lawsuit. It's going to cover legal expenses and or damages that occur if somebody sues you because of your operations as a business owner. So that's the basic definition of general liability insurance, and obviously we'll get into it a little bit more detail. One
thing we'd like to say is that even those who are thinking about starting a business, I mean, a business is not up and running yet. It's only in the mind, or it's in a business plan. Should be thinking about insurance at that point. I'm sure there are many people who don't get around that, but starting up a business, Coach, advice from the insurance standpoint, legal, a lawyer, accountant, those kind of things.
This is your team, and you need a team to help you start and operate a business, and one of the members of your team has to be an insurance, because there's certain insurances, as Adam will explain, that you have to have. You have no choice. This insurance that you should have, like general liability, in case somebody trips or falls, has a problem, product liability. And there's also some insurances that are nice to have if you can afford them. But the insurance agent is definitely a very important member of your management board of advisors with you, if you would, or not board of directors, board of advisors, as you say, your lawyer, your accountant, your insurance person, your banker, quite frankly.
And your local bartender.
And your local bartender, and the golf course manager.
Speaking of which, Adam, I mean, do you have people who are thinking about forming a business, talk to you, or have you had that experience?
Regularly. I have a number of relationships with local agencies that help business owners get started, and I work closely with them just to discuss. And the reason we cover general liability is because it's the one insurance that every business owner should have, whether they have a brick and mortar space or not. Mm-hmm. If you're operating a business, this is the one must have. As the legal expenses, as you know, typically cost you a lot more than any property damage might cost. The lawsuits are getting more and more expensive, and this is the one coverage option that we talk to business owners
don't forget, lawyers
time.
make their money by the number of hours that they put in.
Sure.
And so they can really stir things up with each other, and do nothing but stir it up and create a big fat bill. I mean, I've said this before. I could sue him for wearing a red tie. I can do that.
You can.
Whoa.
Yeah, if it hurts your feelings, you can sue him for it.
Anything. And then I'll pay my lawyer to sue him. He'll pay his lawyer to defend him. He'll win, sort of, but we both wind up paying attorney's fees.
Sure, and they sue everybody that they can that's involved. So they'll sue the business owner, they'll sue the landlord, anybody that's connected to it.
That's right. Everybody's going to be named in a lawsuit, including your dog.
Correct.
And then we're going to continue on with your introduction, coverage limits. So tell us, coverage limits per occurrence, aggregate limits, fire, legal limit, and medical expenses. Would you go through those for us?
Sure. There's a few limits that apply to every general liability policy. And the first one that's the most noticeable on the top is per occurrence, which essentially just means you have an occurrence that causes third-party damages or legal expense. That's your limit for that one occurrence.
Could be 100,000, 500,000, a million, whatever you bought, whatever you paid
Correct.
for. Right.
Correct. They go in tiers anywhere from $500,000 up to $2 million
right.
per occurrence, but it protects you for that one event.
Right.
And then you've got your aggregate limit, which essentially is your total limit for the year. So you could have multiple occurrences as long as they don't exceed that aggregate limit.
Right.
You still
Within
have
a year
you still have money in the bank, so to speak, to cover
right.
the expenses.
So if you have $500,000 of liability coverage and you get sued for a couple $100,000, well, legal, that's taken care of. If they have to pay the $200,000, then you've only got $300,000 left, or whatever
Correct.
the number is for the difference, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Then you've got fire legal limit, or as we call it, tenant's liability, or liability for premises rented to you. This is an important limit if you're leasing a space. Essentially what this does is, if you're a tenant and your landlord blames you for damage to their building, this limit's going to apply to cover those damages. And then lastly, you've got medical expenses, which I refer to as the goodwill fund. It's usually a $5,000 or $10,000 limit. And what it is if somebody is on your premises, twists an ankle, something like that, they have minor medical bills, and you want to give them a sum of money so that they don't file a lawsuit, that's what that medical expenses limit is there for.
Yep.
Yeah. And you limit, you recommend limits. I mean, you don't, I mean, the person who's seeking insurance, you're recommending what it should be. You're looking at their business situation and making recommendations on
Oh,
this,
never, never. We actually advise them what limits are available, but ultimately, we advise them to do whatever makes them feel comfortable, because
whatever they can afford. Yeah, you'd be liable if you did make any recommendations, and you can't do that.
Correct. And how do you tell somebody what amount they're potentially going to be sued for?
You can't do that.
So it's a difficult conversation to have, but yeah.
It's what they're comfortable with and what they feel they would like to have, yeah.
Precisely.
But if you say to them, I think you should have 100,000, and they get sued for 5, then you're on the hook too. No.
Exactly.
Yep.
Adam, we've got we're still working on your introduction. This is a big introduction here. And this is other coverage parts, premises liability, bodily injury, property damage. Can you give us a rundown on that, please?
Sure. Premises liability is probably the most common. It's what everybody knows about. It's really what I refer to as the slip and fall coverage, so to speak. It's your liability for the premises you maintain. If somebody walks into your space and they're injured, or something they have with them maintains damage, and they sue you as a result, that's your premises liability.
Right.
Anything that results from your space. And then you've got bodily injury liability, which is again, just what it sounds like.
Somebody slips
You're
and falls.
responsible for somebody's injury, whether it's on your premises or off your premises. If you're operating your business and you're at somebody else's location and you cause them bodily injury, the policy is going to respond.
Right.
And then lastly, you've got the property damage piece, which
That's the dovetail with, well, for instance, automobile, or I mean, you have an automobile or a truck, for instance, if that's required in your business and you cause bodily injury or you've got that insurance.
Sure.
And plus this.
Yeah, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but the general liability actually excludes coverage for injury that stems from the operation of an automobile because that's covered under
It's
your
covered
auto
under
policy.
maybe a policy, right.
So
Right.
The insurance companies do a good job of keeping things separate so that you're not double dipping, so to
Duplicating,
speak, and getting a check from two different policies.
Yeah.
Property damage
Property, yeah.
is really the last piece here, which covers just what it sounds like, your responsibility for damage to somebody's property. So in my job, I go out and visit clients a lot. If I walk into my client's office and I trip on a wire that causes an electrical fire, he can sue me for that.
Right.
And that's my liability for property damage.
Right.
It's his property. I owe him money for it. The policy responds in that case.
All right.
Okay, well that was, yeah, all right. Let's go on to,
What is advertising injury? That's a new one on me.
yeah.
Advertising injury is actually, it's grouped together with personal injury.
Yeah.
I speak about these two together because that's more or less your libel and slander coverage, which is big these days.
Yeah.
It could be if you make an advertisement for your business and it's slanderous towards one of your competitors, or there's some sort of a trademark infringement embedded in that advertisement, your liability for that could potentially cost you a lot of dollars.
Yeah, trademark infringement could, especially if it's a
Absolutely.
big company that's after you. Yeah.
Sure, and personal injury could be anything. Again, it's essentially you hurt my feelings, or you did something that caused me mental anguish that in turn cost me X amount of dollars as a business owner or an individual. And it's very important to have this piece, especially now with the use of social media.
Social media.
People put things out there without even thinking about how it might come back and bite them in the rear end in the long run, and that's where this piece can really be helpful.
Yeah, I have a word for when they put things out there that
yeah?
they should. Yeah, it's called stupid. I mean, I tell people all the time, be careful what you put out there into the cyberspace because you can't unring a bell.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's out there, and boy, you're liable for what you put out
Sure.
there.
People make emotional reactions to things, and
Right.
this coverage can help with that.
Okay.
It would occur to me, I mean, if you talk to people who are starting a company, never think of that, never think of this. I mean, you're informative and you're telling that person, but they when they come to see you, they're not thinking about this potential liability.
No, nobody realizes it exists, you know.
Well, it's not their business. That's your business to explain to them. Here it is. It's available to you. Yeah.
Correct.
Right. They're not. They're in a different business, right?
Okay, and further to your introduction is coverage examples.
Sure. So I shared a couple of examples of how each of these limits and coverages can apply, but essentially it's you're operating a business and somebody comes in and wants to sue you for whatever you're doing. For example, we have a lot of retail businesses on Cape Cod. You're walking through the aisle, you trip on a toy or a loose piece of clothing, and it causes injury. And you're going to sue for that. That business owner needs to have general liability in place to pay for those damages. Or restaurants as well. Another big thing, I mean, restaurants are everywhere and nobody thinks about it, but you go to eat at a restaurant and you get food poisoning or contract some illness because the food was improperly prepared, that's a huge liability exposure, and you know, it's expensive.
Which is why I tell people all the time, you do not open a restaurant in your own name and do it as a DBA or a sole proprietor. You do it in an S corporation. You need that separation right there. But that's not enough. That's like building a castle to keep the enemy away. The next thing you need to do is put a wall around your castle. And then the next thing you do for insurance is to put a moat around the wall, throw some piranha in it. So each of these things protect you from the ugly potential tort suit, that's going to eventually, it's not will it come, it's just when. Somebody's going to sue you for something. We live in the most litigious society on the earth.
Absolutely. People sue for everything. And
we have too many lawyers, And Shakespeare, I mean, what was Shakespeare, 1500 and something?
Yeah, 1500, yeah.
I mean, he said it best. The first thing, I think it was King Richard II, the first thing we must do is kill all the lawyers. Okay, this would solve, of course, put you out of work, but I mean, it's a tough situation. You better pay attention to your insurance.
Well, it's also true at the same time that running or operating a business, you should be running that business properly
of course.
with a view toward.
You have a corporate social responsibility
to
do things responsibly.
Right. And now we come to an arcane subject: errors and omissions, also known as professional liability purposes and definitions. What do you got for us on that, Adam?
So errors and omissions is something that is excluded under the general liability form. Because it applies to very specific professions and operations. We call it professional liability because it applies to the quote-unquote professional.
CPAs, lawyers, consultants, right.
People who are getting paid to give advice or draft contracts.
Right.
Real estate agents are another big one.
Right.
Essentially, this policy is going to protect your liability for giving poor advice. If you're a financial advisor and you tell your client to invest in a certain portfolio and that portfolio fails, you can tell your financial advisor, hey, I'm going to sue you because you gave me poor advice and it resulted in me losing X amount of dollars. And that's a real exposure.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Well, that's actually this next slide. You've got professional classes that have a need for E&O, right? It's called, as you call it,
yes.
E&O.
We call it E&O in the business because it's
errors and omissions.
Anything we can come up with an acronym for is helpful because we have.
We can acronymize. I just made it a verb. We can create an acronym for almost anything. I have a book of acronyms, and for every combination of letters, there's 20, 30 different meanings to a lot of it. I'm sure E&O means several things, but to an insurance agent, It means errors and omissions, right?
Yes. So again, it's really broadly any business that's providing advice. So it's your accountants who are giving tax advice, or they're filing tax returns,
right,
or handling your bookkeeping.
Yep.
They can be sued just for their advice as such. Real estate agents are given advice on values of property, whether you should or should not submit an offer, whether there's problems with the property you're looking at.
Right.
There's a number of exposures there. Financial advisors we already talked on. They're telling you how to invest your funds
Right.
to be profitable. Myself, an insurance agent. Again, we touched on I never give somebody advice on what limits they carry, because
You'd be liable.
if I tell them carry $1 million and they're sued for more than that, that's an error and omission on my part, because I advised them to do something and it wasn't enough to protect them properly.
Right.
So my job obviously is to educate people and let them make the best decision for themselves. But there's a number of professional classes. Doctors.
Oh,
Huge.
Doctors. Ooh.
We call that malpractice insurance,
Right,
but
yeah.
I mean, think about the risk that doctors have.
Yeah.
And those are 5- and 6-figure fees that they have to pay, or premiums that they have to pay.
It's scary.
I
So
know.
yeah, anybody that's in a position where they could be sued for malpractice or poor advice of some
Right.
sort, it's highly recommended that you get yourself an errors and omissions or
Right.
E&O policy.
Or I suppose inspectors. I mean, you have people who inspect houses or buildings or.
Yeah, same type of thing. They're going to go in a house and they miss something, and they tell you what's wrong, but they miss that the sewer is maybe bad, sewer system or whatever.
Home inspectors,
Home inspectors.
architects. Architects are a big one. I work with
Architects,
a
yeah.
lot of architects because they have to be aware of what the building codes are when they're designing a home
Right.
or a building. And if they design it and it's not up to code and there's an issue, then they can be sued.
That's right.
So if you're doing something that you're providing advice, or if you're not sure if you're doing something that you could be sued for your actual work, then talk to your insurance agent about errors and omissions and see if it makes sense.
Okay, and continuing on with you on errors and omissions, professional liability. You're going to tell us about differences between this and general liability. What is
Sure.
that?
Again, the major difference is your general liability, just to sum up, is your liability for damage to somebody's property, damage to their body, or damage to their psyche.
Psyche, yeah.
So that's your general liability, which is not going to cover your operations as a professional or your advice.
Right.
So
Right.
errors and omissions, conversely, is going to cover your liability for the advice that you provide
What you say.
as a professional,
Right.
but it's not going to cover personal injury, bodily injury, property damage.
Right.
And advice, we've talked about it. There's documents in there. I mean, you misspell, you leave something out, you have a misstatement, whatever. Also in documentation, of course, as well as verbal advice.
Well, again, going back to the real estate professionals, look at real estate attorneys who have to do title searches, and they need to make sure that property is recorded appropriately with the registry of deeds. A misspelling on something like that can cause quite an issue. So,
Right.
and mistakes happen.
I see. Coach, you have people coming to you complaining about their errors and omissions or getting assaulted, for creating an errors and omissions problem. You get people like that
On
your
occasion we
doorstep?
do, because there's just, well, I probably shouldn't continue to beat up all the lawyers of the world. I mean, that's how they make their money, is by filing lawsuits, quite frankly. That's where the big money comes in. Yeah, people get sued for all kinds of reasons. And some of them are not justified, quite frankly, and they're just looking to settle. So the insurance company says, why don't we just settle this for 25 grand, and boom. So it's either going to come out of your pocket or the insurance company's pocket. So just life. That's the way it is.
I don't know. I was thinking about this Fox Robbins show. We talk to small business, but you have like business brokers who act as a broker, between people who are looking to buy a business or people who are selling a business. Business brokers, intermediaries. You have another way of. That's a way of starting a business instead of just starting from zero scratch. Go buy a business. Another one would be a franchise, kind of a deal. Lots of legality going on there. A chance for errors and omissions, in that sector for sure.
Absolutely.
So, we talk a lot about that on this show. We say in small business you have to start a business from scratch. No, you don't. There's lots of businesses for sale out there. There's lots of ways to make a mistake buying a business, but it's still a good idea to look into it. And the franchise type opportunities should be looked at by.
Sure, there's a lot of that out there. People retire. People don't want to run their business.
Well, the boomers, like we talk about now, the boomers are coming of age. They've run their business for 20, 30, 40 years, some of them, and they're getting ready to retire. There's going to be a lot of businesses available for sale over the next decade.
Adam, we're going to do 2 episodes with you, if that's okay, to cover the material.
Absolutely.
This will be episode 1, guys, so look for Adam. All of the Fox Robbins shows are uploaded to YouTube. They also appear on public access TV, possibly in your locale, but if it doesn't, we put it on YouTube. And so you go and watch Adam on YouTube at your time, at the time that you have available at your convenience. And we're gonna do a second episode with him, so make sure to look for that also. Again, this is Fox Robbins, and we're glad to have you on board. You can send us comments at foxrobbins@gmail.com, and we will see you guys next time.